One more thing to look at is, well, or a group of things to look at after e4. Then, well, I mean, there are so many things that you can play here for black. I mean, there's b6 and a6 and g5 I've seen played at some point. Goodness me. Um, I mean, I'm hoping that sensible. I mean, the same message that we've had throughout. Put your pieces on sensible squares. You won't be worse, and just look out for black's ideas, which aren't pointless. We hope, and you should be okay. E4 b6 is unusual. Owen's defence, it's known as after Reverend John Owen, I think, an old boy who used to play in Morphy's era. D4, bishop b7, so attacking the d pawn, e pawn, bishop d3, and now there is a great idea here for black which doesn't work, and that's f5. And the idea is takes on f5, takes on g2, and black's winning a rook or at least an exchange. But it's actually white's go here, so always a thing to look out for. Once you've played a clever idea, it's your opponent's go and they have their say. Queen to g5, h5 check, nearly mate, g6, f takes g6, again nearly mate, bishop g7, takes on h7 check, king f8. And now, when I was a boy, there was a line that involved taking on g8 here, and off we go. But in fact, we've learned since then that knight to f3 here is just about winning. White's got so much activity, so many threats all over, so many parts of the board. For example, if bishop takes h1 here, takes the rook, knight to e5, and black's suffering horribly. This is a relatively straightforward win for a win for black here, win for white here. So instead of taking on h1, knight to f6, queen g6, which obviously hits the bishop. And now again, if black takes the rook, then knight up is going to be painful. So bishop takes f3, knocks the knight out, and in this position, black's actually a piece ahead. So, but look at the attack you've got for the piece, and plenty of ideas to continue it, I would hope. So rook takes h7 here, and now queen to g3, hitting the bishop, and if take bishop to e4, because there was an attack on the rook, takes queen f3 check, picking the piece back up, and if knight f6, queen takes a8, and you just material up here, and should win. So after bishop d3, f6 is a great idea which doesn't work. If instead e6, knight f3, c5, c3, and now knight bd2, knight c6, there's a sort of a half of a threat to play takes and takes and knight to b4, irritating your bishop. So a3 is the only subtle idea you need to remember here. Takes, bishop e7, castles, rook e1, and white's just got more space and no problems. Black's solid enough, but we'll find it very hard throughout the rest of the game to meet threats on both sides of the board. That's really what a space advantage means, and as long as white doesn't allow too many simple exchanges or allow the pawns to get fixed in a position that doesn't suit your pieces, you should be fine. Bishop d3, knight f6, queen e2 is a less easy way to defend the e pawn than rook e1, and now knight to c3, e5 is an idea for black. Knight f3, castles, and after bishop e7, again this a3 idea to keep the knight out of b4 is helpful. This time if the bishop comes to a6, you've got a problem on the long diagonal, so a3 is an idea here. or just push the knight away with d5. This is a closed position that you might not want to play, but I don't think black ought to want to play it either. Neither black bishop is comfortable here. When this position is played for this type of position is played for black in d pawn openings. This bishop usually belongs on g7, and this bishop usually should stay on c8. So this is sort of an old Indian position where black's got their pieces on all the wrong squares, and I think white is fine. So wouldn't know why black would want to play this. So that's Owen's defence. Mike Basman and co came up with a different way of playing this queenside fianchetto with a6 and after d4 b5 and a move behind, but perhaps in a better idea of this for white. After knight to f6, queen e2 is safe and sound. Similar sorts of lines that we've just looked at, really. After these sorts of moves, maybe a3 is the right move here. Knight bd2 takes, queen b6, and now knight to b3, and I think so. You've got a solid, if not terribly exciting, position here for white. If instead of queen e2, e5 is more aggressive in this position, knight to d5, knight to g5, hitting h7 is a strong move that's rather awkward to meet. If e6 here, for example, queen f3 and knight takes h7 with advantage to white, and so I think this particular move order for black is no longer right. So after knight to f3, I think black has to settle for playing e6 lines, and with the sorts of positions that we've already looked at. Just one last idea to look at, without a lot of analysis. G5 for white. I don't know what black's going to play here, and it's a bit hard to tell. I suspect something like d4 is going to be fine, and if h6, then you've got ideas of sticking your knights on squares like f5 here. These are black really doesn't have any compensation for these weak squares, and I would have thought almost any sensible development played well is good for white here. You've just got a sort of built-in target on the king side. You can't quite play the lines that you might want to with knight f3. It's going to get, that's just asking to be hit with g4. But if you didn't want to play a plane like that, if you wanted to play a setup with knight to c3, bishop e3 and knight on g to e2, as we recommended against the Burke defence, then I would have thought you'd have a good time playing those sorts of moves h4, and white should stand well. So doesn't really admit of analysis. One game I just thought I'd show you in the slow lines against the St George's defence, as it's called, this extended fianchetto. c5 c3, and now black's a little bit later with the knight f6 move, and so we haven't had to defend our e pawn with queen e2. We can defend it with rook e1, which I think makes more sense. And now a game between Michael Hennigan and the inventor of this style of play, Michael Basman, continued h6. Obviously not a very dynamic move, and now white unleashed a bit of aggro in the centre. After bishop e7, black's not going to capture on c5 in one move, so the following sequence: e5 takes on c5, knight e4, obviously centralising the knight with effect, and looking at this weak d6 square is a nice idea for white. And after bishop to e7, a4, making a point about the weaknesses on the queen side. And now if the a pawn moves, perhaps c4 is an idea for white. In fact, in this position, black took on a4, white took on a4, and after queen to c7, the bishop dropped back out of the way, knight to b6 hitting the rook, and in this position white claimed the d6 square at last. Takes, queen retreated, and now rook came across to g4, looking at the abandoned queen side. It's a slightly curious position this, after all the pokes and swaps and exchanges. Both sides have only got 2 pieces off the back rank, but white's pieces on the back rank have mostly been developed and are looking rather strong. Black's pieces on the back rank are all still where they started and are not looking that strong. So g5 was played here to try and hold the king side together. h4, it doesn't hold the king side together. Takes on g4, queen to d4, annoying the rook, and after a move like rook to f8 takes on h6. So f6, trying to hold things together. Rook to g7, very striking move at this stage of the game. King f8, queen to g4, and now a move like bishop takes h6 is coming anyway. Black's position's just fallen apart. So that's international master game from 1991. Michael Hennigan against Basman, and I suppose it shows the sorts of not very complicated style of play that can work against these funny openings. White I don't think put their pieces on unusual squares or had to find terribly odd ideas. And there was just that interesting sequence once you got your pieces in good positions. This is a very standard setup for white against all sorts of openings. There was just a nice way of trying to work out how to exploit the d6 square. So how to play against odd defences, and hope you do alright with them.